Lost Hills from Fallout 1 and 2. When Captain Roger Maxson led his soldiers out of Mariposa Military Base in October 2077, he had no idea he was about to create one of the most powerful factions in the wasteland. After finding out about the horrible FEV experiments the government was running, Maxson declared they were done with the United States just days before the bombs dropped. His group made the brutal walk to the Lost Hills bunker in Southern California, losing many people along the way, including Maxson's own wife. But by 2082, they'd officially become the Brotherhood of Steel, complete with new ranks, new traditions, and a new mission: save technology for humanity's future. Lost Hills became the Brotherhood's main base and basically set the standard for what the whole organization stood for. Under high elders like Maxson and later his family members, the chapter grew into a major power in the region. They traded with the Hub, fought off the Vipers after losing Maxson II to a poisoned arrow, and eventually helped the Vault Dweller destroy the Master's super mutant army in 2161. For years, they were the top tech experts in New California, slowly giving advanced weapons and knowledge back to the wasteland. Unfortunately, this success got into their heads. The Lost Hills Brotherhood grew complacent, hoarding tech instead of adapting to a changing wasteland. They stopped recruiting, refused to share knowledge, and dismissed outsiders. Their protection of humanity excuse alienated allies like the NCR and slowed their own progress. By the 2240s, Lost Hills had become isolated and stuck in their ways, convinced they were humanity's only hope, and too proud to see that the world was moving on without them. This pride would eventually lead to a brutal war with the NCR that cost them bunkers, soldiers, and their top spot in the West. Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel, Fallout Tactics. This chapter started as a complete disaster that somehow turned into an empire. After the Master was defeated, Lost Hills sent a group east on airships to hunt down any remaining super mutants. Unfortunately for them, a massive storm ripped their fleet apart over the Rocky Mountains, which killed most of the leaders including Paladin Latham. But the remaining survivors crashed near Chicago and had to adapt fast. Cut off from the West Coast and all their strict rules, they built something totally different. A brotherhood that actually let outsiders join and took over territory aggressively across the Midwest. Under leaders like General Barnaky and eventually the Warrior, this chapter created a military state that stretched from Colorado to Lake Michigan. They fought nasty wars against raiders, the Beast Lords, and a huge super mutant army led by their own lost Paladin Latham, who'd been turned into the warlord Gamarin. But their biggest enemy was the Calculator, a crazy AI controlling an army of robots from Vault Zero. The final attack on Cheyenne Mountain in 2198 saw the Brotherhood blow up a nuke right at the Vault's door just to get inside. They won, but lost a ton of people doing it. What makes this chapter special is they'd recruit anyone: humans, ghouls, super mutants, even smart Deathclaws. By 2277 though, contact was lost, and they'd shrunk down to a small group near Chicago, considered traitors by the rest of the Brotherhood. Lyons Brotherhood of Steel, Fallout 3. In 2254, the West Coast Elders sent Star Paladin Owen Lyons east with one job: grab advanced technology from Washington, D.C. What they got instead was a complete rebellion against everything the Brotherhood stood for. Lyons showed up in the Capital Wasteland in 2255, set up base in the Pentagon, renamed the Citadel, and found Liberty Prime, a giant robot that could have made the Brotherhood powerful again. At first, Lyons focused entirely on restoring Liberty Prime to regain the Brotherhood's strength. But witnessing the chaos and suffering caused by super mutants changed his outlook. He began to believe protecting people mattered more than just hoarding technology. The West Coast hated this shift in Lyons though, so they cut him off completely. No backup, no supplies, nothing. About 20 years later, in 2276, things got way worse when Paladin Henry Kasdan led a massive walkout, taking half of Lyons' soldiers and equipment to form the Outcasts. By 2277, Lyons' chapter was barely surviving. Not enough people, not enough gear, and fighting a losing battle against endless super mutant waves. Then the Enclave grabbed Project Purity, and Lyons made one last crazy bet. They fired up Liberty Prime and launched a counterattack on the Purifier. Against all odds, they won. The Lone Wanderer and Sentinel Sarah Lyons got the Purifier working, giving the wasteland unlimited clean water. Soon after, they crushed the Enclave's leadership at Adams Air Force Base, finally winning the war. Lyons died quickly after, at about 2278, but his heroic impact lasted. The East Coast Brotherhood became a major power, even though many people later thought his nice guy approach was a mistake. Brotherhood Outcasts, Fallout 3. Roughly 20 years after Lyons' change of heart, the Outcasts was formed. In 2276, Paladin Henry Kasdan and a huge chunk of Lyons' chapter walked out of the Citadel, angry that their elder cared more about saving wastelanders than grabbing technology. They took a massive amount of weapons and equipment with them. Lyons lost more soldiers in that single moment than in years of fighting mutants. Kasdan's group seized Fort Independence and went back to the original mission: find and secure pre-war tech at any cost. They painted their armor red and black, called themselves Outcasts as a badge of honor, and got to work. Set up regular patrols across the capital wasteland, hunting for technology and completely ignoring the people around them unless they got in the way. They were way more effective at tech recovery than Lyons ever was, even running excavations at places like the Virtual Strategic Simulations facility. Their plan was simple: build up strength, gather enough gear, then head back west to reunite with the real Brotherhood and get Lyons court-martialed for betraying their code. But in 2283, something unexpected happened. Arthur Maxson, the young heir to the Maxson legacy, used his symbolic authority as Roger Maxson's descendant and his charisma to appeal to both Lyons loyalists and the Outcasts. This ultimately led to peace between both groups. The Outcasts rejoined the Brotherhood under new rules that mixed both philosophies. They'd still help people, but technology recovery came first. Most welcomed the reunion, even if some Lyons loyalists quit in protest. Mojave Chapter, Fallout New Vegas. This Brotherhood of Steel chapter was basically sent away because their leader was too unorthodox for Lost Hills to deal with. Elder Elijah, a former scribe who pushed for inventing new tech instead of just collecting old stuff, got shipped east around the early 2260s with orders to secure Hoover Dam. The conservative elders wanted him gone, and this mission gave them the perfect excuse. Elijah set up base in Hidden Valley and immediately became obsessed with Helios 1, a solar power plant he thought held some kind of ultimate weapon. He forced his paladins to garrison it despite their objections, convinced he could unlock its secrets. When the NCR moved into the Mojave in 2273 to secure Hoover Dam, Elijah doubled down on Helios 1, convinced its Archimedes/Poseidon weapons grid was the trump card. Unfortunately for them, the NCR decided to execute Operation Sunburst, a coordinated assault to seize Helios 1. Now this wouldn't have been a problem because the Brotherhood's armor and lasers outclassed the NCR's, but the NCR was far superior in numbers and logistical planning. Casualties mounted until over half the chapter was gone. To add salt to the wound, Elijah abandoned everyone on the eve of the final push. This left Paladin McNamara to command the chapter and order a withdrawal. McNamara became elder and pulled the survivors back to Hidden Valley, sealed the bunkers, and cut almost all outside contact. By 2281, the Mojave Brotherhood was trapped, too weak to challenge the NCR, too proud to ask for peace, yet still dangerous enough for every major faction to watch them closely. Mr. House even listed them as his top long-term security threat. With no real allies or options left, McNamara kept the chapter sealed underground, sending only small night patrols to gather supplies and intelligence while they quietly rebuilt and waited for an opportunity to strike back. East Coast Brotherhood, Fallout 4. After Lyons died and Sarah Lyons followed shortly after, the East Coast Brotherhood went through a rough patch with several weak elders running things into the ground. Then Arthur Maxson stepped up. At just 15, he killed the super mutant leader Shepard, who was trying to reorganize the Capital Wasteland's mutants. A year later, in 2283, he negotiated peace with the Outcasts and united both groups under new rules that mixed Lyons' protection with the Outcasts' tech focus. This was great in the eyes of the West Coast elders, who eventually gave him their blessing, making him the youngest elder in Brotherhood history at age 16. Under Maxson, the chapter became a serious military power with one huge advantage: the Prydwen, a massive airship built from salvaged Enclave parts. In 2287, Recon Squad Gladius detected weird energy readings in the Commonwealth, the Institute's teleportation tech. Maxson immediately ordered a full expedition to Boston. The Prydwen flew east with a huge combat force, seized Boston Airport from feral ghouls, and declared war on the Institute and its synths. Their plan was simple: rebuild Liberty Prime, the giant robot destroyed by the Enclave years earlier, and use it to crush the Institute for good. After arriving in Boston and declaring war on the Institute, Maxson imposed strict wartime rules to maintain order and discipline within the newly occupied territory. The Commonwealth chapter operates under these conditions: no fraternization with locals, shoot-to-kill orders for trespassers, and zero tolerance for synths or super mutants. They also strong-arm settlements for food supplies, making some wastelanders see them as just another gang of thugs. Under Maxson's leadership, they're powerful and organized, but their brutal methods and hatred of non-humans make them as feared as they are respected. Appalachian Brotherhood of Steel, Fallout 76. This chapter had a tragic story. They were the first Brotherhood chapter outside California, and they got completely wiped out before anyone could help them. It started with Taggarty's Thunder, a U.S. Army Ranger unit led by Lieutenant Elizabeth Taggarty. They were stationed in Appalachia for pre-war joint training maneuvers and readiness tests. When the bombs dropped in 2077, they were running simulated military exercises in the Appalachian caves. Using surviving military communication links, Roger Maxson was able to contact them via satellite and convince Taggarty to join his new Brotherhood. Though she was hesitant at first about following a traitor, the stable connection and his reputation as a former U.S. officer helped win her trust. They set up at Camp Venture and eventually moved to Fort Defiance, a former asylum, as their main base. Everything was going okay until they discovered scorch beasts in the Cranberry Bog, mutated bat creatures that spread a plague, turning people into mindless scorched. The Brotherhood realized this was an extinction-level threat and fought desperately to contain it. They got some help from Lost Hills, including weapon designs and research tools, but communication failed by the 2090s as satellites broke down. Cut off and alone, Taggarty launched Operation Touchdown in January 2000 2095, leading her best soldiers into the Scorch Beast's underground lair. They managed to kill enough to stop attacks for about a week, but it wasn't enough. By August 18th to 19th, 2095, the Scorched completely overran Fort Defiance and Thunder Mountain power plant. The last survivors, including Squires Rosen and Gildan, were killed defending their positions. The Appalachian Brotherhood was gone, leaving behind only their weapons, research, and the hope that someone would finish what they started. Brotherhood 1st Expeditionary Force, Fallout 76. Years after the original Appalachian chapter was destroyed, Lost Hills finally sent help, but it took over a decade to arrive. Paladin Layla Romani led the 1st Expeditionary Force east in the late 2090s with orders to investigate tech sites, find out what happened to Taggarty, and set up a new Brotherhood presence. The journey was brutal. They crossed over 2,000 miles of wasteland and lost most of their original members, including Knight Alan Connors, who died when raiders used their own weapons against a settlement they tried to protect. This incident created a massive split between Romani and Knight Daniel Shin. She wanted to help people first. He demanded they follow orders and face trial for their mistakes. By 2103, only 3 original members made it to Appalachia: Romani, Shin, and scribe Odessa Valdez. They'd picked up dozens of recruits along the way, though, and after securing the Atlas Observatory, renamed Fort Atlas, they discovered what happened to Taggarty's chapter. The Scorch Beasts had wiped them out completely. Romani decided they needed to work with local factions and protect Appalachia's people to succeed where Taggarty failed. Shin disagreed, insisting technology recovery should come first. Things came to a head when Romani destroyed their long-range communicator to avoid more restrictive orders from Lost Hills. The move gave her freedom to lead as she saw fit, but it also deepened the growing divide between her and Shin. That tension reached a breaking point later, when the team confronted super mutants created by a rogue scientist's FEV experiments. Romani wanted to save the mutated victims, believing they could still be helped, while Shin demanded their total destruction to prevent any risk. Their clashing ideals over mercy versus duty made reconciliation impossible and tore the group apart. The conflict between protecting people versus following strict Brotherhood doctrine eventually forced members to pick sides, with one leader either killed or sent back west, depending on the player's choice, while the other took control of Appalachia's new Brotherhood chapter. And that's every Brotherhood of Steel chapter. Which one's your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.